Leonarda Cianciulli (1893–1970) was an Italian serial killer, better known as the Soap-Maker of Correggio. She murdered 3 women in Correggio between 1939 and 1940 and turned their bodies into soap. In 1939, Cianciulli heard that her eldest son, Giuseppe, was to join the Italian army in preparation for World War II. Giuseppe was her favorite child, and she was determined to protect him at all costs. She came to the conclusion that his safety required human sacrifices. She found her victims in 3 middle-aged women, all neighbors. Some sources record that Cianciulli was something of a fortune teller herself, and that these women all visited her for help. Others state merely that they were friends of hers seeking advice. Whatever the reason, Cianciulli began to plan the deaths of the 3 women. The first of Cianciulli's victims, Faustina Setti, was a lifelong spinster who had come to her for help in finding a husband. Cianciulli told her of a suitable mate in Pola, but convinced her to tell nobody of the news. She further convinced Setti to write letters and postcards to relatives, to tell them that everything was fine. On the day of Setti's departure to Pola, Setti came to visit Cianciulli one last time. Cianciulli offered her a glass of drugged wine, then killed her with an axe and dragged the body into a closet. There she cut it into 9 parts, gathering the blood into a basin. In her memoir, Cianciulli described what happened next in her official statement.
I threw the pieces into a pot, added 7 kilos of caustic soda, which I had bought to make soap, and stirred the whole mixture until the pieces dissolved in a thick, dark mush that I poured into several buckets and emptied in a nearby septic tank. As for the blood in the basin, I waited until it had coagulated, dried it in the oven, ground it and mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs, as well as a bit of margarine, kneading all the ingredients together. I made lots of crunchy tea cakes and served them to the ladies who came to visit, to my son Giuseppe, and I also ate them.
Francesca Sovi was the second victim. Soavi's body was given the same treatment as Setti's, and Cianciulli is said to have obtained 3,000 lire from her second victim. Cianciulli's final victim was Virginia Cacioppo. The pattern to the murder was exactly the same as the first 2, according to Cianciulli's statement.
She ended up in the pot like the other 2. Her flesh was fat and white. When it had melted, I added a bottle of cologne, and after a long time on the boil, I was able to make some most acceptable creamy soap. I gave bars to neighbors and acquaintances. The cakes, too, were better. That woman was really sweet.
Cianciulli was tried for murder in Reggio Emilia in 1946. She remained unrepentant, going so far as to correct the official account while on the stand. She was found guilty of her crimes and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. Cianciulli died of cerebral apoplexy in the Women's Criminal Asylum in Pozzuoli on October 15, 1970. A number of artifacts from the case, including the pot in which the victims were boiled, are on display at the Criminological Museum in Rome.